beliefs and things, you have to free your mind. You have to free your mind and understand that there are many things that exist that you have no history of, you have no knowledge of. And one of those things is you have to let your mind go and understand that seeing as believing is not the only rule. There's a lot of things in this world that exist that you cannot see. And I remember my grandfather trying to explain that to a very, very well-educated person. And the guy goes, the educator says, well, I'm a scientist. I can only believe. Seeing is believing. My granddad sat there and he looked at him and he goes, well, I can't see a fart, but I know it exists. One of many examples of great Indian wisdom. Okay, now if we start from that point of view,
I got you.
we're in good shape.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where we're at with. I'm not trying to simplify a very complex subject, but that's where we're at with our beliefs. There's a greater world out there that you can't see. There's a greater world out there that these don't hear. You're trained to, since childhood, your parents, they won't let you believe or talk to your imaginary friends because that's just make-believe. In our world, that's very real.
Mm-hmm.
You encourage it. You encourage it because that's the eyes of truth. A child sees with pure eyes, unadulterated, unjaded.
Mm-hmm.
But parents don't, I don't know why, but I guess because it's something that they can't control. So they don't let their child believe this. They don't let them see it or understand. And so by the time a child is 4 or 5 years old, he's put a corral, he's put a wall around what he knows to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And they start losing that ability to see. We try to encourage that amongst our younger people, amongst our babies. Growing up, it was thought of as a gift. Don't try to encumber or to block that gift. You've got a gifted child, let them. It's kind of like, what are the gifts that Jules Verne was given as a child? What are the gifts that some of these great writers that you call fantasy or myth?
Mm-hmm.
No, maybe that's something that they actually saw.
Mm-hmm.
They saw beyond this screen. I like walking out on this little view. It's powerful. It's kind of a microcosm of a very, very, very powerful world that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a little kid and your grandparents are taking you around to places, there's stories connected to everything. There's stories connected to this place, connected to the foods, the bounty that it gave you. And this here is a period right at the beginning of time. Called this it's first step above down there. This is the first step. And it's a term that just means the first rise or the first plateau. As we walk along here, there's so much. Oh, I love that. So many different types of sage, each with its own unique gift.
Mm-hmm.
You look across at that imposing evolutionary structure.
Sure.
Again, the many layers that are unfolded here, it gives you a really good view of that. And once again, there's this here, we have a natural draw, small canyon, which was capitalized. This is where you would have bighorn sheep run down. And so there are cairns along there. There are cairns, hunting blinds, on both sides that they would dispatch the animals from. Whether they were mule deer, whether they were antelope, whether they were bison, there were buffalo here then. Up until the 1700s, there were buffalo. 16 and 1700s is when the buffalo were eradicated by bovine diseases that had swept the prairies. Had come long before the first white people showed up here. Probably 100 years before was the unleashing of this great tsunami of death brought by their cattle, their pigs, their goats, their sheep. Everything that was not indigenous unleashed its own diseases. Then people, unleashing smallpox, cholera. My granddad said, God, you guys must have been a filthy bunch, because those are all born of filth. And so, prehistorically and historically, this is a land that's been well utilized. And as you look out, as you pan out that way, you'll see how once again it flattens out. And it's protected. This area is a very sheltered area. So in the bitter winters of the Waterville Plateau and the higher plateau areas, this was actually a pretty calm area.
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's such a unique little bottleneck in here anyway.
Yeah.
And now that I realize that it's a big transportation corridor, or whatever you call it. What did you call it? A dry river?
A dry highway.
A dry highway, yeah, right. So the fact that, this has to be an incredible place to leave your mark.
And this is actually one of the areas that our people came to for first roots, the first food, was in here because it was protected. It heated up quicker in the springtime. Mm-hmm. It was a basin for water that was coming off that still comes off the cliffs in the springtime. And now, what am I looking for? I am looking for something that's almost invisible. Maybe I'm way too late. Just one of the many things that, like I say, touchstones to remember. This is a different smell from the other sage.
Sure. Oh my God, it sure is.
And it's a different flavor. There's certain plants here.
Wow.
That take you back. This won't take you back to Wisconsin, let me tell you. But it's a smell that you will forever remember. It'll be nailed into that posture and moment of time that was right now.
Right now.
And you'll always remember it. It'll be triggered once again wherever you go and you come across that smell. Okay, where did I? See, some of these plants come up and are only here for a moment, only here for a week or 2 weeks out of 20 years.
Out of 20 years?
Yeah, this spring, this whole area, this was a garden like you would not believe. Everywhere you looked was in bloom. The whole thing looked like it had been landscaped by a wonderful, some great Olmsted type landscape designer. And we wandered through here. Everywhere there were bitterroot, there was biscuit root, everywhere along here. And you know, the beauty of this area, you can't dig in this, so you don't have to worry about people coming in and over harvesting an area.
Right.
You cannot sink a digger stick into any of this. So it's by its own nature protected, which we need.
We do.
But this spring, like I said, it was a...
What was it about? Oh, you got it.
Oh. Grab that top off. Roll that in your hand. Crush it up, roll it before you now smell it. Oh, that's the good shit. Isn't it?
Yes.
Here you go.
Okay.
Do that one.
Oh.
This is Indian perfume for men.
It really is like walking in a perfume shop. Or cologne, yeah.
Or your pot shop. It's got that strong a smell. Powerful.
Is there a special name?
Huh? Yeah, there is. We'll just keep that to ourselves.
Okay. All right. Oh. Talk about remembering and reconnecting.
You take
and
a
rewiring.
couple of these and put them on your dashboard.
Uh-huh. A state car will never smell so good. Okay.
They will ban you from using the state car. For those who don't understand what I'm doing here, what we're doing. This has a scent of Afghani bud. I hear. So I hear.
Or so I've been told.
There we go. That's what we're talking about. So I wasn't just blindly looking around. I knew it was there.
You were on a mission. I could tell that.
One of those scents that transports you back, and you'll never forget it.
Yes. Well, that's what these days are like with you, Randy. Days that I'll never forget.
I like to think of our old time people as being very solidly affixed to their domain. There wasn't a plant here. There was not an indigenous plant. There wasn't an indigenous element that we did not exploit or learn to exploit. And we say that all comes from the lessons and the teachings of the animals. We learned the hardest woods. We learned the best stone to use for spear throwers, for atlatls, for bows, for arrows. All of that we learned from the animals, which the properties of plants to be used for medicinally. See, there, how do I put it? In so many books and so many references, this plant is toxic. This plant is extremely toxic.
Yeah,
this plant is deadly. To us, those were medicines. There wasn't a poison out there that did not have a medicinal purpose. So I know my great-grandma, my grandma, they tapped those all the time. They would come to these areas for one specific plant, whether it was Chakpachiawat or whether it was Dakchin. Those were all had powerful curative powers, either physically or mentally. But only in a certain area could you extract it from. In another area, it was nothing. You know, it had no purpose for them. Now we're starting to get into this rock that's kind of layered. What do you call it?
Kind of entablature.
Entablature. Wonderful name.
Oh my.
It's not only beautiful, it's got a wonderful root bulb. Yuck. Yuck Alps is what we call it. And it's known by Mariposa lily. It's got a nice, the bulb is kind of reminiscent of a Chinese water chestnut. Nice and crisp.
There's a few more right behind you.
Yeah. And you generally, like up at Badger Mountain, they're like dwarf ones, only this big, with a really miniaturized version.
So they're with us just a week or two, or more than that?
It takes them all spring. You'll see the stem, and they'll be sitting there all spring, and for all of a sudden, overnight, they're all in bloom at the same time. Then a week or two later, overnight, they're all gone.
Oh, wow.
It's like bamboo blooming. Oh yeah, as I look around, they're everywhere.
Well, they really are. I mean, add this to the list of stuff that I never would have noticed. Oh my heavens. Oh, Randy, come on.
And overnight they look like this.
Oh, gone.
Yeah, this probably all happened yesterday. And by tomorrow, it will all be a shriveled remnant. You won't see anything. And if you look up there, you'll see coyote. He's baying, he's howling. And then if you look to the right, you'll see that another pinnacle column standing out. Well, coyote is standing there and he's screaming because Pish, Nighthawk, who he had fallen in love with. He saw only a beautiful, beautiful young girl. And he obsessed upon the beauty of this nighthawk and her voice and her whoosh, pish, whoosh, she would make. Well, she tricked him. She knew what coyote was about. Coyote is the embodiment, or people are the embodiment of coyote, men especially. Men are consumed by what? Two things: food and sex. Coyote had this bad habit of falling in love with one of the beauties out here. But after he was done with her, he would generally eat her. Well, Nighthawk knew this was happening, and so she punished him. She tore his penis off, and that's what's on the right-hand side there. That's Coyote's dick right there. And that's the reason he's screaming, he's howling it. She has tricked him. And so, where do you live? I live right below Coyote's dick. Oh yeah, we know where you're from. Don't marry any girls from down here. Don't marry any boys from down here. You'll never live through it. You'll never outlive it.
wouldn't it be even warmer down on the floor of the main coulee?
But it wasn't protected by the winds.
Got it.
This was.
Got it.
You very seldom catch winds in here. If they are, they're cooling winds during the summer. In the wintertime, the airflow is different. So that's what we have going on here. And this is what basically what the land was like this. Bunch grasses, Mariposa lilies, none of the cheatgrass. And beside you, you have wild rye called jump grass. This was a key. They took the leaves. You're familiar with what corn husk bags are? You see them in the museums and stuff, and you see them at the parades and powwows. Well, before we have corn husk, we had wild rye. And they would dry this, and then it turned white. And then they would weave their bags out of this. It's beautiful. Gives you a finer weave. And my mother, she hated this but I love it. This here part. Sugar cane. Full of sugar.
So this area burned last summer, so this is less than a year old.
Yeah.
Developed like pretty healthy, it seems like. I don't know.
Their roots go down 15 feet.
Really?
Yeah. So you can burn off the top and you can burn down 10 inches into the soil with a hot fire, but still they'll return.
I see.
And as kids, this was our sugar.
Kept you going.
Mm-hmm. But in the summertime, when these ripen, my mother and them had to go out and they used to have to beat these with beaters, and they would beat the seeds and the tops off into baskets. Oh. This was our flour. Oh. The Great Basin wild rye, then it came in the Eurasian wild rye. But all of the seeds they used.
Oh, it's beautiful.
See, you see the beauty of, you see the beauty, you see the practicality and the wealth of everything. Sure. A lot of people don't. They can be looking directly at something. They just look at the superficial.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what we've been trained to do. We're in a consumer society.
Yeah, man, the only way to know this was a place that a lot of people lived for thousands of years is through you.
Through the history, through the oral history. And I know there's a lot of our people who are against sharing this knowledge. Mm-hmm. But if you don't share it, it turns into what you see down below. Unless you protect these areas, unless you value them for what they are, a small remnant of what used to be. You got to value that. You got to value it, like my grandfather used to say. You got to want it as much as you want life, because that's what it is. It is our life. Our land is our life. That's our world. And we're inseparable. And to lose parts of it, and to lose that knowledge of it, and to lose that history of it, you're losing a part of your life. You're losing part of the integrity. You lose what it means to be Indian. So, I have people who tell me that they had learned so much. I take my cousins and younger relatives, and we come out here, and they go back, and there's like information overload. But when you have overload, all you want to do is you want to download it with somebody. You want to share it.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's what they've been doing. Good. They've been sharing all this. Uncle, we brought so-and-so out there. I had to show them that spot. And we're going to come to one of those spots up here. All of these spots. So somebody says, you're building on sacred ground. It's all sacred. It's all holy.
Yes, it is.
Lock your door. We're in a white neighborhood. I can see that. So there's coyotes, ook ook. Schmeow kechten, ook ook. Coyote and his penis. All of these are lessons to be learned. You know, when you're telling these stories, you glean lessons. It's protected, it's sheltered, and on the other side, on the inside, it's even more protected. We're getting into this layered, this I get baklava, baklava stone.
Come on, Gizmo.
I remember that gremlin. See how protected that is? And over here was where there used to be a continual waterfall.
Well, yeah, what a paradise this little
Oh yes, that's exactly. Here's the layered look that I'm talking about. Grandma used to just say, God was mad.
That works for me.
And she covered these. These were, every one of these represents a being that had thrust itself up from the chasms below. And so the Creator got mad and covered them so that they would stop being a threat.
Okay.
And so she was mad. She was mad. Mam umpt. The holy land, the motherland. She was mad, so she capped it so that they couldn't keep growing.
Ah.
And
each column a different being.
yeah, each column was a, you know, in our world, in our Indian world, we are surrounded by a pantheon of mighty beings from the last era, or the era before the last era. And when the Creator when Huyan Choten had seen his creations getting out of hand, he would send somebody to bring it into control. Mm-hmm. And so they put a lid on them. You can't grow anymore. You're getting too big for your britches. And this is a different type of basalt, a different type of rock. See how edgy it is? Sharp edges.
Mm-hmm.
They would hunt these areas for the proper thickness and thinness to become tools. So these areas were really well, how would you say it? They were well respected areas for getting materials. I'm going to walk over here and hopefully not run into a snaddle rake. More metal in these.
Yes.
So it's easy to put a blade on something here.
Okay.
And so this is the go-to place. You know, every rock has had, you know, you pick up artifacts. Sometimes I'll pick up one and I'll show it to Grandpa. I said, look at this one. And he goes, he said, that's a good one. He said, this was used, first it was used as a axe or a club. Then it was turned into one for snapping off stone. It was used at, you know, and he told me the many ages of this one rock. And he said, it's kind of like the Swiss Army rock. Many purposes for that one tool, sure. that one stone. And when I look here, did you ever try climbing this stuff? Just how dangerous it is.
It's tricky business.
It is. But I've seen mountain sheep just go right up these things. Deer go right up these things.
Yeah.
And they're very special spots. Even stone had its, not all stone is created the same. Not all lava is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not all basalt is the same. This spring, each one of these layers, each one of these benches was a strip of color from different blossoms coming out at different intervals. It was just spectacular and just hanging with green.
I don't know what's special about this spring for those flowers, but it feels like everywhere.
Everywhere. It sure was. And that's what I think our old people valued about this. It was probably more common then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not every year, but it was a lot more common than it is now.
Mm.
And I can only imagine being out here in March when all these were just flush with waterfalls. Every one of these was waterfalls shooting over.
Yeah.
This is probably the 10th time I've stopped right here this year so far.
I understand why. It's a special place.
One type of garden right here. It was like one type of, I see mock orange out there. I see shiaya out there. Shiaya is sarvisberry. We ate the fruit. We used the wood as architecture. We used the leaves as medicine. All in one bush, the go-to bush. One that is just taken, it's overlooked. And right down there you see a whole field of currants. Coyote currants. I didn't particularly as a kid value them because I'd have to be out there in the summertime or in June gathering them, and it just seemed so insufferably hot here. But now I yearn for those days. I long for those days of being out here, of hearing the voices of your relatives, of other kids, making a good time out of a real
hard work. Yeah.
Making play out of work.
Right.
And as Grandma said, that's why God invented children. That's why God invented grandchildren. Otherwise, we would just spring into this world as adults. Children will keep you young or put you in an early grave, depending upon how you raise them. Okay.
Well, every time we roll through here, anytime I roll through here from this point on, I will remember how special this stretch is, which of course I've never given a second thought to, really, to be honest, right in here. Oh my gosh. I can now see it.
Yeah. It was lush. And from here, people would move off onto the higher grounds for different types of roots. Your home is where you brought it, where you were within your land. This is our Palestine. This is our Jerusalem. This is our Holy Lands. This was one of the reasons that we came here a lot. Coyote currants. Coyote currency. No seeds.
Delicious.
It'll give you a wonderful aftertaste. You can make pies out of this like you would not believe. Preserves.
So you were right here as a kid.
Yeah.
In the heat.
Or like now, whenever they were ripe.
Yeah, it's like, Randy, go pick.
Yep, we'd be down here with our little baskets, filling them up. Because we knew that when we filled all our baskets, our little baskets up, Grandma finished dumping them into her big basket, which she will have claimed to have picked. She's like Coyote.
She was a character.
And as soon as we were done filling she would time it so we didn't get bored. Pick that, then you can go play over there. Go find me some horned toads.
Mm-hmm.
Horned toads, they would take and they would put them on their heart. There was, again, the reconnection to the power within that being. Old time people, that's one of the carryovers from the second, last era, last world, one before it, and the one before it. That's when horned toads were big. They were giants. But they were kept as a reminder. The Creator held them back as a reminder that there were other ages before us. So you hold them to your heart to give you heart, and the horned toad would transfer to you the goodness from it. So I was out here digging roots about 5 weeks ago, and there were two of them sitting on opposite sides of each other, rocks, bobbing their heads. So I picked them both up and I stuck them in my pocket. And I walked around with them. And I looked down, and there was one on each side of me bobbing their heads. They didn't go anywhere. They just stayed in the pocket. They were safe. And I'm going, now, I feel like I've been blessed, you know?
Yes.
And throughout this spring, I have found more horned toads than I have ever found in my life. Throughout every day, I was finding horned toads and post lizards, blue-tailed skinks. When we look out here, look how flat and beautiful that is. It's like the Creator has given you a very special place, and that was. There were 3 water sources that came out of the rocks there. So they always had a fresh, and there still is. Mm-hmm. There's still water that seeps out and it fills 2 basins here. This is your garden here. They kept it burnt off, and so every year there was an abundance of roots here. Every year you could come out here and find. You started off with your ayo, your chachalosa, yakyalps. They were all coming up, staggering at different times. So you're harvesting or gathering continually. As one disappears, another one comes up. And as you could see with the Mariposa lily, how it's all there. In a couple of days, it won't all be there.
Yes.
And the currants, I should be out here now gathering these, because they're optimal. Right now they're at their peak. They will become a little more tart as the days go on. These are still not at their peak. They're a little harder to get off. Mm-hmm. This is the one that drew my attention. It was right here from back there. I could see it. The burning bush here.
Man, just thick.
Mm-hmm. As they dry, or when we pick them like this, we'll put them close to a fire, lay them out. We'd put mats down at an angle, wet mats, and we put these all over, lay them all over it. And as they heat up, get really warm, then it starts releasing the sugars. Then they turn into raisins. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
Hardly any seeds at all to contend with. makes the most wonderful preserves or pastries. See, we didn't consume a lot of sugar. That's totally the United States of America.
Yes, it
and
is.
Germany.
Yes, it is.
And so all the sugars that our sugar intake was from natural foods like this. Not really sweet, but to us it was sweet. You know,
Right.
there was enough there to where it was like very special. You know how many gallons of berries there are out here?
I mean, I'm just taking it all in. Yes. And so if it's 1961 and you're a kid here, or earlier than that, maybe the late 50s, when you're out here picking with
56.
your grandmother, 56, are you guys just coming up here for the afternoon, or you're living here a little bit?
No, we didn't have to. We lived in Wenatchee Heights.
Wenatchee Heights, yeah.
So we'd get down here right at the break of dawn. Grumble, grumble. You know, kid grumbling,
Exactly.
whining.
Yep.
In every culture you whine.
Oh well, I was a champion whiner. This is so unfair, and nobody else. My friends don't have to do this.
My
Why
friends
do I
are
have
going
to do
swimming
this?
today.
Yeah, right.
Well, Grandma knew that. So she would treat us. We go out and you kind of a little of this for a little of that, a little of this, a tit for a tat.
Right.
And so we'd always go down. Swimming was not really special, although we loved it, but that wasn't. What was special was a popsicle
Oh yeah.
or a Dixie cup. So we would do her bidding. We would have to do it anyway, but she was very special. She would give us a piece of Christmas candy that she'd had embedded in the bottom of her bag for a year. But she was very thoughtful. She'd reach down to the bottom, dig around, then she'd pull it out, then she pull the hairs and everything else off, then hand it to me. And I felt so special. She went through the extra effort of cleaning off all the detritus that was on it. And those are the things that we remember.
Exactly.
Those are the things that stick with you.
Right.
Grandma love.
Yep.
Grandma love. Parental love. Mm-hmm. And many people, they don't see it. That's not special. That's not. To us it was. When you're poor, everything is special. Mm-hmm. But we were never poor. We never were. Any family that could put a salmon on the table, or a half a side of deer on the table, or bags of berries and roots, that's not poor. That's rich. We were poor in material things. Well, we weren't even. We made a lot of things. Mm-hmm. We made do with a lot of things. That's our playground. Look at that. That is just so spectacular. I had a young lady here from Germany a while back, and she says, "My God, that looks like man created that." I said, "Man could never create anything that beautiful. Only God could make something like this. Only the Creator, however you define the Creator." It sweeps around. Mm-hmm. Much like the feathers down in Frenchman's Coulee.
Exactly.
It's interesting because they chose those two areas, this here as one, and then the basin of Frenchman's Coulee as another. There used to be a creek that used to run off the cliffs down in there, and that deepest part of that basin used to be
really
fresh water all the time. You kept your horses away from it. You kept your animals away from it if you had animals.
Not as protected over there, though, I'm guessing. A pretty windy place. I am enjoying the fact that this is so tucked away here. I'm fully absorbing why this place was selected. Frenchman. What else about Frenchman? Maybe we'll go there sometime.
Yeah, we'll save that for. That's another Sally Jesse Raphael. Okay.
Dated reference.
Touchstones, you know. I need to say
I'm
something.
remembering. I need to taste and feel Sally Jesse Raphael to really
I need to wear
remember
her.
those crazy
This reminds
glasses.
me of her glasses.